There's something about the way people describe him. Daniel Keene. Disciplined. Brilliant. The kind of guy every mother hopes her daughter brings home. To most, Daniel was a checklist of virtues. Born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, in a devout Catholic household, he seemed destined for great things from the very start. He wasn't just the top of his class, he was the top of everything. Captain of the debate team, varsity swimmer, valedictorian, and later, a scholarship cadet at the U.S. Naval Academy. Teachers called him a model student. Coaches called him unbreakable. His parents called him their miracle boy. But there's one thing no one ever thought to call him: dangerous. That part came later. Back when Daniel was 17, he met Lina Mendez online, on a now-defunct forum for high school creatives. She was a junior at a performing arts school in El Paso, Texas. He was the clean-cut Navy-bound scholar with medals. She was the girl who wore eyeliner to rehearsal and scribbled poetry in the margins of her script. Their paths should never have crossed. But in the early days of the internet, when connection came easy and distance felt smaller, they found each other. A series of private messages turned into long calls that bled into the night. They didn't share a zip code, but they shared something deeper, the belief that the world didn't quite understand them. Daniel fell for Lina quickly. She had this raw energy about her, messy, ambitious, unfiltered. She made him laugh. She challenged his rigid worldview. He made her feel safe, seen. And when she told him she didn't plan to go to college because she was chasing acting full-time, he didn't argue. He just said, "Then go be great. I'll be here." For the next 7 years, Daniel kept that promise. They never lived in the same state, but they stayed together through it all. While he climbed the ranks in naval engineering, Lina moved from El Paso to Austin, then to Chicago, chasing auditions, bartending at night, sending him photos of casting rooms with too many mirrors and too many girls who looked just like her. She called him every night before bed. He replied with love letters disguised as emails, some typed at sea, others between shifts on base. It should have been romantic. It should have been enough. But something unspoken was growing inside Daniel. Something dark and slow. He never said it out loud, but Lina's world made him nervous. Actors. Directors. Big city nights. The kind of attention she got when she walked into a room. The way men looked at her. The way she sometimes let them. He started asking questions. Who's that guy on your Instagram? Why was your phone off for 6 hours? What do you mean he dropped you home? At first, Lina laughed it off. Relax, Dan, she'd say. I'm yours. Always. But over time, the laughter faded. The calls became shorter. The updates less frequent. And when Daniel asked if she was still planning to come visit over Thanksgiving, Lina hesitated. I don't know, there's a callback that weekend. That was the first time Daniel didn't say, it's okay. He hung up instead. Still, to the outside world, Daniel Keene was thriving. By 29, he was already a lieutenant, stationed in Maryland with an impeccable record. He had a modest condo, no debt, and a drawer filled with letters from his commanding officers praising his precision, leadership, and calm under pressure. But inside, especially at night, he wasn't calm. He was angry, restless, distrustful. He started checking Lina's social media more often, scrolling back through every tagged photo, analyzing every man's face in every frame. He opened their old messages, searching for signs he'd missed. Once, after a particularly hard day at the base, he spent 3 hours just rereading their earliest chats from high school. Back when things felt simple. But Lina had changed. She was different now. Bigger, bolder, and lately distant. Then came the text that shook him. Sorry I didn't pick up earlier. Was at Noah's place rehearsing. Noah? He read it 3 times. The name meant nothing to him, but it meant something. He called her immediately. She didn't answer. He called again. Straight to voicemail. A minute later, she texted, "Can I call you later? We're just running lines." But Daniel didn't wait for that call. Instead, he opened a new tab and searched the name, Noah Caldwell, Chicago producer. There he was, 34, Emmy-nominated, executive producer at NBC Chicago. Well-dressed, charismatic, smiling alongside Lena in a tagged photo at a rap party. She never mentioned working with someone like that. The next day, Daniel called her again. This time, she picked up. Her voice was breathy, rushed. "Hey, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you in an hour?" He hesitated, then asked, "Are you with him right now?" Silence. Then a soft laugh. "Dan, don't do this." But it wasn't a no. Later that night, he watched one of Noah's old interviews on YouTube. The man had charm, real charm. The kind that made people lean in when he talked. The kind Lena had always been drawn to. That was the night Daniel began planning his visit. Officially, he told his superior that he needed a long weekend in Chicago to settle personal matters. He booked a one-way ticket for March 6th. No return flight. He told no one else. By then, he hadn't spoken to Lena in 2 days. When the plane touched down, the city was gray and cold. It was still early, barely past 5 a.m., when he arrived at her apartment building in West Town. The lights inside were dim, quiet. He stood outside for a long time, watching, thinking. Then he walked up to the door and rang the bell, twice, and waited, because Daniel Keene, the perfect son, the ideal officer, the loyal fiancé, had just crossed a line that once crossed, there's no coming back from. Chicago has always promised something. For the ones who arrive hungry, with stars in their eyes and just enough money for 3 weeks' rent, it offers a stage. For others, it offers escape. For Lena Mendez, it was both. When she first moved to the city from El Paso in the summer of 2015, she told herself it wasn't just about chasing fame. It was about finding out if she had what it took. The city was sharp, alive, demanding, and Lena was ready to meet it head-on. She started small, background roles in indie shorts, commercial voiceovers, stage readings in basement theaters. She poured herself into her work, skipped birthdays, lived on instant ramen and Red Bull. And through it all, Daniel was there, hundreds of miles away, calling every night, asking about her auditions, telling her he was proud, even when he wasn't sure what she was doing anymore. But it was during a casting for a new television pilot that Lena met the man who would change everything. Noah Caldwell. He walked into the room like he owned the air. Early 30s, confident, polished without trying too hard. A producer for one of NBC Chicago's most successful late-night sketch shows. He wasn't just someone with influence. He was someone who knew exactly how to use it. Their first conversation wasn't flirtatious. It was practical, professional. Lena was surprised by how seriously he took her. Most producers she'd met barely looked up from their phones. But Noah asked her real questions. About her process, her voice, her vision. She didn't get the part. But a week later, she got a message from him. "You're not right for this role. But I'd like to see what else you can do. Come in Tuesday." That Tuesday turned into 3 more meetings. A couple of dinners. A private reading for an unscripted reality concept he was developing. And then, one evening, after walking her home in the rain, he asked, "You said your roommate moved out, right? If you need a place while you look, I've got space." Lena hesitated. Daniel wouldn't like this. But she hadn't seen Daniel in over a year. Their phone calls were getting colder. And here was Noah, present, supportive, plugged into the city's pulse. He didn't just make her feel special, he made her feel seen. She moved into his loft the following weekend. She told herself it was temporary. But soon she was staying most nights. Cooking breakfast in his kitchen. Answering calls from his balcony. Wearing his hoodie on windy afternoons. They weren't just housemates. They weren't just anything anymore. And yet, Lena never officially ended things with Daniel. Maybe she didn't have the heart. Maybe she didn't want to close the door completely. Every time he called, she answered. She told him about her auditions, left out the details. When he asked about Noah, she downplayed it. "He's just a producer. He's helping me network. That's all." Daniel believed her. At least he tried to. But doubt is a slow poison. It doesn't need proof. Just silence. Gaps in the story. Pauses that last half a second too long. Noah, for his part, wasn't hiding anything. He and Lena went out together. They were seen at rap parties, film mixers, Sunday brunches. He introduced her as his girlfriend. Lena never corrected him. One of Noah's closest friends, a fellow producer named Shannon, later told investigators. They were like any new couple, gross, honestly, holding hands, stealing kisses, whispering like teenagers. I didn't even know she had a fiancé. No one did. The irony, Shannon recalled, came one night when Lena pulled her aside at a bar and asked, "Do you think Noah's serious about me? Like, for real?" Shannon laughed. "You're living with him, babe." Lena didn't laugh. Her eyes searched the room, unsettled. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like he's still auditioning other women. Even when he's with me." It was a strange comment, but Shannon dismissed it. Actors were always insecure. What Shannon didn't know, what no one in Chicago knew, was that Lena was living a double life. One where she was the girlfriend of a rising TV producer. The other, a long-distance fiancé to a military officer whose jealousy was quietly hardening into something sharp. The night of March 6th, everything seemed normal. Noah had told friends he was helping Lena move into a new apartment that day. She'd finally found her own space, closer to Logan Square. He promised he'd be back by morning for a pitch meeting at the network. That meeting never happened. When Noah didn't show up by 10 a.m., Shannon started to worry. He was never late. Never forgot to text. By noon, she called his phone. No answer. She tried again at 1 p.m. and again at 1:30, and again every 15 minutes. Nothing. A total of 130 calls were made to Noah Caldwell's phone that day. Only one was answered. Shannon, eyes bloodshot from worry, told police later. It was weird. A woman answered. I thought maybe his assistant or something. The voice was calm, maybe too calm. Hey, Noah forgot his phone at my place. He left late last night. Around 1:30. Shannon asked who she was. The line clicked dead. She tried calling again. Straight to voicemail. She hadn't recognized the voice, but later, after everything came out, she would identify it as Lena's. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Daniel had already arrived. He hadn't told Lena. He hadn't booked a hotel. He hadn't come for sightseeing. His Uber dropped him off at her new apartment just before 6 a.m. The building was quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ribs. He stood there for a moment, breathing. Then he pressed the doorbell, twice, and waited. What happened next would unfold in blood, paint, and fire. But that would come in the morning. He hadn't planned on hearing it. In fact, if Lena had picked up the call a second later, or if the voices in the background had been just a little quieter, maybe none of this would have happened. But sometimes, life tilts just enough for the worst possible version of events to fall into place. It was 9:43 p.m. on March 6, 2017. Daniel Keene was sitting on the edge of a creaky bed in a no-name motel outside Chicago, phone pressed to his ear, staring blankly at the TV playing a silent local news broadcast. The room smelled of bleach and cigarette smoke, even though the sign outside clearly read non-smoking. Lena picked up after 4 rings. Hey, she said, her voice bright, a little too bright. Where are you? Daniel asked, trying to sound casual. He wasn't. At the new place. Finally finished moving. I'm exhausted. Alone. The pause. Half a second too long. Yeah. Why? And that's when it happened. In the background, so faint, it could have easily gone unnoticed, Daniel heard a voice. Friendly. Laughing. Then, you still want Thai or something lighter? Lena spoke quickly after that. Her tone snapped back in, fast, controlled. Dan, I'll call you back later. I need to shower and unpack. The call only lasted 41 seconds. But it detonated something inside him. Daniel didn't call back. He didn't text. He didn't scream or plead. He just stared at the floor for a long, long time. Then he stood up. He changed into his navy blue pea coat. And without even checking out of the motel, he left. At 5:57 a.m. the next morning, Lena's doorbell rang. The city was just starting to wake. Cars hummed softly down the block. A lone jogger passed the building, earbuds in, oblivious to what was about to happen behind those walls. Lena, still in a t-shirt and flannel pajama pants, shuffled toward the door barefoot. When she opened it, she froze. Daniel was standing there, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, his face pale, jaw clenched, eyes locked onto hers like searchlights. "Dan, what are you?" He didn't wait. He stepped past her, dropping his bag at the entryway, scanning the apartment. "Where is he?" "Dan, please." "Where is he, Lena?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a blade. Lena tried to block his path, hands on his chest, pushing him back. But Daniel wasn't the kind of man you could stop once he decided to move. He pushed past her again and strode straight to the bedroom. There, still half asleep, shirtless, sitting up in confusion, was Noah Caldwell. "Hey, what the hell is going on?" Daniel didn't answer. He lunged. The fight was short, brutal, and horrifying. Lena screamed. She tried to pull Daniel back, grabbing at his arms, his coat, anything. But Daniel was bigger, stronger, and more than anything, he was furious. He landed punch after punch until Noah stumbled out of the bed, dazed and bleeding, and made a desperate run toward the bathroom. The door slammed shut behind him. For a moment, there was silence. Lena sobbed, crouched on the floor, pleading for Daniel to stop, for him to leave, for anything other than what was coming. Then she heard it. The crash. The door burst open. Daniel had kicked it off its hinges. And in his hand, Lena would later tell police, was a knife from her own kitchen. What happened inside that bathroom was described in court only once, in a statement so chilling the room fell into silence. Noah was stabbed 22 times. The last wounds were defensive. He was still trying to fight, even after his body had given up. When it was over, Daniel stepped out, soaked in blood, breathing hard, his eyes glassy and distant, as if he were somewhere else entirely. And then he turned to Lena. What came next is where the story fractures. According to Lena's confession, Daniel forced himself on her, right there on the bloodied floor of her apartment. She said she didn't fight. Not because she consented, but because she was afraid if she did, she wouldn't survive. Daniel, when later questioned, denied this. He said they held each other and cried. That it was mutual, a shared trauma, a blackout moment of grief and rage. The truth, perhaps, lies somewhere in between. But what's undeniable is this. By 8:30 a.m., Noah Caldwell was dead, and Lena Mendez and Daniel Keene were no longer just lovers. They were accomplices. At 9:10 a.m., Lena left the apartment to buy cleaning supplies. Curtains, garbage bags, a second knife. Surveillance footage from a Walgreens 2 blocks away would later capture her in the self-checkout line, hoodie up, face pale, eyes empty. She paid in cash. Back at the apartment, Daniel had started cleaning. They worked silently, methodically, like people possessed. Wiping blood, scrubbing grout, wrapping Noah's body in layers of plastic and cloth. They painted over the walls. Too hastily. The color didn't match. One wall ended up a shade too bright. The police would notice this later. At 3:15 p.m., they borrowed a pickup truck from a friend of Daniel's, someone who had no idea what was being loaded into the back. And they drove. Around 4:30 p.m., the truck stopped at a gas station near the outskirts of Wisconsin. Daniel filled 2 red jerry cans with gasoline. The clerk remembered him. He was polite, said he was heading to a cabin, even joked about bears. They drove another 40 minutes to a forested area off a narrow service road. It was there that they set the bags down, doused them in gasoline, and struck a match. No words, no prayers, just flames. At 9:40 p.m., they were back in Chicago. Lena took a long shower. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at a crack in the countertop that hadn't been there before. They didn't speak about what they'd done. They didn't need to. The silence between them said it all. But what they didn't know was that during the cleanup, Lena had made a mistake. One that would change everything. Sometimes, a murder doesn't feel like a single act. It arrives in stages, suspicion, silence, something sharp inside a man cracking until what's left isn't a person anymore, but a storm looking for somewhere to land. Daniel Keene wasn't thinking clearly when he kicked open that bathroom door. He wasn't calculating. He wasn't careful. He was just gone. According to Lena, it happened so fast she didn't even have time to scream again. One second, Noah was trying to jam the lock closed. The next, Daniel's boot crashed through the thin wooden door with a sound that would echo in her memory forever. Then came the knife. It wasn't a military blade. It wasn't some pre-planned weapon stashed in a bag. It was a kitchen knife. 8 inches. Stainless steel. Bought 3 months earlier from a home goods store around the corner. The kind used to slice fruit or carve a Sunday roast. Now, it was being used to end a man's life. The coroner would later say the attack lasted less than 90 seconds. But in that apartment, it felt like time unraveled. Daniel lunged. Noah tried to defend himself, grabbing a towel rack with both hands, kicking wildly. The first cut struck his left forearm. Defensive. Instinctual. Then came the second into his shoulder. Then another. And another. Lena had collapsed to the floor outside the bathroom, sobbing into her palms, hearing the grunts, the struggle, the sickening thud of bodies hitting tile. Then, silence. And then, the sound of water running. Not the shower. Not the sink. Just water. Pouring. A leak? It was the blood. When Daniel finally stepped back out into the hallway, his coat was soaked. His shirt clung to his body. His hands, his face, covered in streaks of red. His expression? Like someone who had wandered into the wrong reality. Lena's voice shook as she asked, "What did you do?" Daniel didn't respond. He just walked past her into the living room, sat down on the couch, and stared at nothing. Minutes passed. She stood frozen, breathing shallow, her eyes flickering toward the open bathroom door, unable to bring herself to look inside. Eventually, she asked again, "Then, what did you do?" This time he spoke. He deserved it. 3 words. Final. Like closing a book. What happened next is murky. Both Lena and Daniel would later give differing versions, overlapping in some areas, contradicting in others. But here's what investigators were able to confirm. Sometime between 6:30 and 7 a.m., Lena went into the bathroom. She saw Noah's body slumped in the tub, covered in blood, his chest rising slightly, or so she thought. Maybe it was the steam. Maybe it was shock. Maybe she imagined it. What was clear was that the floor was slick with crimson. Towels were everywhere. Broken mirror glass sparkled near the toilet. And in the sink, a blood-soaked ring that had slipped from Noah's hand. She turned away, ran to the kitchen, vomited into the sink. By 7:15 a.m., Daniel had stripped off his coat and shirt. He asked Lena where the cleaning supplies were. "We need to clean," he said simply. "Not call the police. Not tell someone. Just clean." Lena didn't move. So he got up, opened cabinets, found a bottle of bleach, a few old towels, and rubber gloves. He turned the water on full blast in the bathroom and started scrubbing. He worked in silence. That silence, investigators would later say, was more terrifying than anything else. At 8:10 a.m., Lena left the apartment. A Walgreens was just 2 blocks away. She bought 2 sets of heavy-duty garbage bags, a new roll of plastic shower curtain, a second kitchen knife, a pair of oversized cleaning gloves, 2 cans of air freshener, all paid in cash. CCTV footage shows her standing at self-checkout, hood over her head, glancing sideways more than once. When asked later why she didn't run, didn't tell anyone, didn't scream, her answer was simple. "I didn't think he'd let me leave if I didn't come back." Back at the apartment, Daniel had moved Noah's body into the center of the bathroom floor. He had already rolled up the bloody rug. He laid out the new plastic curtain. When Lena returned, he nodded toward it. "We need to wrap him. Then we paint." She dropped the bags and backed away. But eventually, she helped. They wrapped the body in plastic, layer by layer, securing it with duct tape. Then they carried him into the kitchen. Not out of practicality, but because the living room carpet was still new and unstained. Then came the walls. They painted over the blood smears. The door frame. Even parts of the ceiling. The paint didn't match. They didn't care. By 11:30 a.m., the apartment looked clean. Too clean. No clutter. No personal items on the counters. No trace of movement. But the smell, the harsh mix of bleach and latex and something else, lingered. Lena opened every window, sprayed the air fresheners, lit a candle. At 1:45 p.m., Daniel called an old Navy friend, said he needed a pickup truck for moving a couch. The man agreed, dropping off his Toyota Tacoma around 2:15. By 3 p.m., the body, still wrapped in plastic, now stuffed into 2 black contractor bags, was loaded into the truck bed. Lena sat in the passenger seat. Silent. Daniel drove. They didn't speak until they reached the Chequamegon Forest in Wisconsin, just over the state line, far enough from cameras, neighbors, or noise. They pulled off onto a narrow dirt road. No signage. No trail markers. There, Daniel stopped. Together, they dragged the bags out. Lena stood back, shivering. Daniel doused the remains with gasoline from 2 red containers. Then he lit a match. The flames rose fast. Noah Caldwell's body, the man with charisma, with a future, with a name people recognized, vanished in smoke and heat. By the time they returned to Chicago at 9:40 p.m., they thought they had erased him. No witnesses. No evidence. Just silence. And then, the phone rang. The body was gone. The smoke had risen into the trees and disappeared. The forest had swallowed the last trace of Noah Caldwell, and with him, everything Lena and Daniel used to be. But silence does not mean safety. And fire doesn't burn away guilt. The drive back to Chicago was nearly 4 hours. Neither of them said a word. Daniel gripped the wheel like it was the only thing anchoring him to the world. Lena stared out the window, watching trees blur past. Her nails dug into her sleeves. The sound of the road beneath the tires was steady, dull, like a metronome counting down to something they hadn't planned for. Back at the apartment, everything looked normal. No blood. No noise. No trace. Except for the smell of bleach. Except for the mismatch of paint on one side of the hallway wall. Except for the silence that now had weight. That night, Daniel stayed on the couch. Lena lay in bed, eyes wide open, the covers up to her chin. At 3:14 a.m., she checked the time. At 3:31, she heard the fridge open. At 4:06, she fell asleep. At 7:42 the next morning, the phone rang. Noah's phone. They had forgotten it. It had been tucked into the lining of one of the bags, and in the chaos of fire, it had slipped out, unnoticed, unharmed. Daniel had found it in the back seat of the truck when they returned. Instead of throwing it away, he turned it off and placed it in the drawer. Now it was ringing again. They didn't answer. It rang 15 times over the next hour. Then it stopped. Then came the knock at the door. Shannon Ellis, Noah's longtime friend and fellow producer, had been trying to reach him for nearly 2 days. When she remembered he had mentioned helping Lena move, she followed her gut and went straight to Lena's apartment. She expected to find Noah there. Maybe hungover. Maybe embarrassed. Maybe in the shower. What she didn't expect was Lena, standing in the building's lobby in a hoodie, refusing to let her upstairs. He left around 1:30 in the morning, Lena said. He forgot his phone. That's all. Then let me get it. Lena hesitated. I'll bring it down. Shannon narrowed her eyes. Something wasn't right. The phone was still in airplane mode when Shannon turned it over in her hand. Noah's case had a cracked edge, and for a second, she thought it felt damp. You sure he just forgot it? She asked. Lena didn't respond. Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Shannon left without another word, and went straight to the police. That same afternoon, a missing persons report was filed for Noah Caldwell. By the next morning, the case was officially active, and Lena became the first name on the list. Not because she was suspicious, not yet, but because she had been the last person to see him alive. Detectives from the 12th Precinct arrived at Lena's apartment at 11:06 a.m. on March 9th. She opened the door wearing a clean gray sweatshirt and light makeup. We're just following up, they said. Mind if we come in? She smiled, said, sure, and let them in. It didn't take long for them to notice things. The faint scent of fresh paint that didn't match the walls. The plastic curtain in the bathroom, still new enough to smell like vinyl. The garbage can empty. Too empty. Not even a tissue. You said Noah left at 1:30? One officer asked. That's right. He didn't come back for his phone? I guess he forgot. The pause. Did he seem upset? Anything unusual? No, Lena replied, voice steady. He just helped me move. That's all. They thanked her. Didn't show their doubts yet. But something didn't sit right. They pulled phone records. And what they found made no sense. Between March 7th and March 20th, there were over 1,000 calls and texts exchanged between Lena Mendez and Daniel Keene. An average of 77 interactions per day. Far too many for a casual visit. Far too many for people supposedly living apart. Far too calculated. Meanwhile, Lena began to break down. In private, she stopped sleeping. Avoided mirrors. When she passed by Noah's old toothbrush in her drawer, she nearly collapsed. And still, she pretended. She bought groceries, took short walks, smiled politely at neighbors. But inside her mind, the floor was cracking. And then came the GPS error. One of the calls made to Noah's phone, the only one that had been answered after his disappearance, had lasted 4 seconds. It was Lena. She had answered it by accident during the body disposal trip. Said nothing, then hung up. But those 4 seconds were enough for cell towers to ping a location. Coordinates: 43.4028 degrees north, 89.5126 degrees west. Not in Chicago. Not anywhere near it. It was a forest in Wisconsin. And that one ping became the piece that unraveled everything. Detectives returned to Lena's apartment on March 13th, this time with a search warrant. They found remnants of the same paint used to cover up the walls. A receipt from Walgreens for industrial garbage bags and curtains. Trace evidence of blood on the bathroom tile, beneath the floor mat. And tucked deep in her closet, Noah's cracked phone case, wiped but imperfectly. That night, Lena was brought in for formal questioning. She held out for 2 hours. Then 3. Then broke. It was a mistake, she whispered. He didn't mean to. She cried for 20 minutes straight. And then she told them everything. The storm was no longer just inside her. It was now public record. There's a specific kind of silence inside an interrogation room. Not like the silence in a forest. Not like the one in a home where something unspeakable has happened. This silence hums. It watches you. It doesn't ask questions, it waits. And that was exactly what Lena Mendez walked into on the morning of March 14, 2017, when detectives finally brought her in, not as a witness, but as a suspect. The room was small. Gray walls. One metal table. A single camera mounted in the corner. The chair across from her was empty when she entered. Just one bottle of water placed carefully on the table, like an offering. She didn't touch it. Lena sat with her arms folded tightly in her lap, sweatshirt sleeves pulled down over her hands. Her hair was tied back, but uneven, like it had been yanked into a bun without a mirror. Across from her, a detective opened a manila folder and began reading without looking up. Lena, you're not under arrest. Not yet. You're here voluntarily. You understand that? She nodded. You told us Noah left your apartment at 1:30 a.m. on March 7th. Another nod. That he forgot his phone. Silence. That you haven't seen or spoken to him since. Lena blinked slowly. Swallowed. Is that still your story? She hesitated for a long time. Yes. It only took 43 minutes to break her. Not with yelling. Not with threats. Just with the truth, handed back to her, piece by piece. A GPS ping from Noah's phone, far from Chicago. Security footage from Walgreens showing Lena buying cleaning supplies at 8:14 a.m., just hours after she claimed to have last seen him. The mismatched paint. The dozens of unanswered calls. And most damning of all, the call she accidentally answered from the woods in Wisconsin. The detective slid a printout across the table. For seconds, he said, that's all it took to tell us where to look. Lena stared at the paper. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Then the detective said, we found bone fragments in the ash. They match Noah's DNA. You didn't move out, Lena. You helped cover up a murder. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke again. He wasn't supposed to be there. They leaned in. Who? Daniel. He wasn't supposed to come. I didn't even tell him the address. But he found it. Yeah. He always could. She inhaled sharply, trying to hold herself together. I didn't think he'd. I thought maybe they'd argue, sure. But not that. What did he do, Lena? He killed him. And just like that, the weight fell off her. The truth, or her version of it, poured out. She told them about the phone call that night, about the voice in the background, about Daniel showing up at dawn like a storm. He wasn't Daniel anymore, she said. He was something else. About the punches, about the knife, about the bathroom, and then, her voice cracking, about what happened next. He made me help. Help with what? Everything. Her fingers twisted the fabric of her sleeve. After he'd cleaned. I didn't think anymore. I just moved. He told me we had to burn it all. Did you ever consider running? Calling 911? A long pause. I was afraid. Afraid he'd hurt you? Another pause. This one longer. No, she said finally. Afraid he'd take me with him. Detectives knew what had to come next. They needed Daniel. That same afternoon, officers from Naval Security Coordination detained Lieutenant Daniel Keene at a military training facility near Annapolis, Maryland. He didn't resist. He didn't ask why. He just stood, saluted the commanding officer, and said, I knew this would happen. During his interview, Daniel was composed. Too composed. He acknowledged traveling to Chicago, admitted visiting Lena, even admitted being in the apartment the morning Noah died. He was smug, Daniel said. Didn't even try to hide it. I walked in and he looked me in the eye like I wasn't even a threat. Did you bring a weapon? No. The knife was hers. Kitchen drawer. Did you plan to kill him? Daniel paused. Then, no. But you did. Yes. Simple. Cold. Like a weather report. And the body? We burned it. Together. Yes. And Lena? She claims you forced her to help. That she was afraid. Daniel's face flickered. Just for a second. She wasn't afraid, he said quietly. She was with me. We were in it together. She knew what she was doing. The prosecutors would have to untangle that. Which version was closer to the truth? Was Lena a coerced accomplice, emotionally battered and manipulated? Or was she a willing partner, too afraid of scandal to do the right thing? Whatever the answer, the system had enough. On March 24, 2017, Daniel Keene was formally charged with second-degree murder, destruction of evidence, and obstruction of justice. Lena Mendez was charged with accessory to murder and tampering with evidence. Bail was denied for both. The courtroom would later become the stage for one of the most emotionally polarizing trials in Chicago true crime history. But before that, there was still one more thing the investigators needed. The site. Armed with GPS data, a forensic team located the burn site near the Chequamegon Forest in Wisconsin. What they found was grim. A partially melted zipper. Fragments of a human femur. A gold molar cap. Traces of plastic fused into the soil. Ash containing high levels of calcium phosphate, consistent with incinerated human bone. They bagged everything. Labeled it. Matched the DNA. It was him. Noah Caldwell. Gone. But no longer hidden. Courtrooms have their own rhythm. Not like a theater, though some might think so. Not like a war zone, though it can feel just as brutal. It's slower, colder. A place where lives are dissected word by word, where truth and performance blur, and where everyone, victim, perpetrator, witness, becomes part of a story none of them ever wanted to tell. For Lena Mendez and Daniel Keene, that story reached its final chapter on a damp October morning in 2018, in a courtroom in downtown Chicago. The gallery was packed. Reporters lined the back row. Family members sat with folded hands and clenched jaws. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but sketches of Daniel's impassive expression and Lena's tear-stained cheeks would soon circulate every local paper. People versus Keene and Mendez. A case that had started with a simple missing persons report had now become a citywide spectacle. A brutal cocktail of love, jealousy, ambition, and the eerie silence of a forest where a body had been burned. The prosecution's case was clear and chilling. They painted Daniel as the jealous, obsessive fiancé who, upon discovering that his long-distance lover was sleeping with another man, snapped, committing second-degree murder in a fit of possessive rage. Lena, they argued, had the chance to stop it, to call for help, to save a man. But she didn't. Instead, she helped clean the blood, bought the supplies, burned the body, lied to everyone, including Noah's family, for days. That, the prosecution said, made her an accessory to murder. Not the one who held the knife, but the one who helped bury the truth. But the defense told a different story. For Daniel, they leaned into the crime of passion angle. A loyal man, betrayed, humiliated, pushed beyond his breaking point. They showed a clean military record, glowing evaluations, letters of support from commanding officers who said they'd never seen him raise his voice. They admitted he killed Noah. They did not call it murder. For Lena, the defense was more fragile and more emotional. They painted her as a woman manipulated, intimidated, emotionally trapped. She had tried to survive, they argued, not to help. She did what she did because she believed, on some level, if she didn't, she might be next. On the stand, Lena cried. More than once. When the prosecutor asked her directly, "Did you want Noah dead?" She shook her head, barely able to speak. "No. I loved him." But the same prosecutor had a follow-up. "Then why did you help the man who killed him carry his body into the kitchen?" Lena had no answer. Daniel never took the stand. His lawyers advised against it. Instead, they let his previous words speak for him, calm, emotionless confessions delivered during his initial interrogation. To the jury, this silence felt strategic. To Noah's family, it felt like cowardice. The trial lasted 19 days. During that time, jurors heard audio of Lena's confession, phone records showing over 1,000 calls exchanged in the days after the murder, forensic testimony about blood traces found beneath painted walls, surveillance footage of Lena buying the supplies, GPS data pinning the couple to the burn site in Wisconsin. They saw photos of the bathroom, of the plastic-wrapped body bag, of the scorched patch of earth that used to be a man. On the final day, during closing arguments, the prosecutor said, "This wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a crime of possession. Noah Caldwell died because someone else believed he had a right to own love. And when that love slipped away, he chose to destroy it and anyone standing in the way." The jury deliberated for 14 hours. When they returned, the room held its breath. Daniel Keene, guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of destruction of human remains. Sentence, 28 years without parole. Lena Mendes, guilty of accessory after the fact, guilty of tampering with physical evidence. Sentence, 5 years with eligibility for parole in 2. Daniel showed no visible reaction. He stood straight, hands folded, jaw locked. Lena wept. Her mother clutched her hand in the front row. Noah's sister turned away. In the months that followed, public opinion remained divided. Some believed Lena got off too lightly, that her tears were real, yes, but came far too late. Others said she was a product of emotional abuse, the kind that doesn't leave bruises but erodes judgment, makes people do things they never imagined themselves capable of. But everyone agreed on one thing. Noah Caldwell should still be alive. He was 34. Smart. Successful. Generous to his friends. A man who had spent his life helping people tell their stories, only to have his end written by someone else. Today, a small plaque sits beneath an oak tree in Jackson Park, where Noah used to jog every Sunday. It reads, "In memory of a voice that lifted others, silenced too soon. You were loved. You were enough." And Lena? She was released on parole in 2022. She moved out of state, changed her name, lives quietly now, far from stages, cameras, or scripts. As for Daniel, he'll be eligible for release in 2044. He'll be 56. And what of the phone call? The one Daniel overheard. The voice in the background. The laugh. The question, "You still want Thai or something lighter?" It was ordinary, casual, meaningless. But to the wrong ears at the wrong time, it was the beginning of the end.